Okay, so we're going to start. This panel session is titled Institutional Policies, Challenges and Priorities, and it's moderated by Silvana La'is, Chairperson at the Arab Regional Office, Lebanese Physical Handicapped Union, LPHU. I will just present to you the panelists, and then I'm sure they will say more about themselves once we start. So on the panel, we have Ms. Aline Karam, Chief Communication Affairs Officer at Alpha. We have Mr. Joe Rahal, Advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigrants, founder of Joe Rahal Foundation. We have Mr. Jennison, help me with Assumption, co-founder, Global Accessibility Awareness Day Engineering Manager, Accessibility LinkedIn International Standards for Digital Accessibility. We have Mr. Shadi Abu Zahra, Web Accessibility Strategy and Technology Specialist at W3C Web Accessibility Initiative. We have Ms. Lina Waidat, National ICT Strategy Coordinator. I believe she's not able to be with us today. And we have Ms. Remy Ilyas, Wellness Outreach Officer, ABA Therapist at the American University of Beirut. So, Silvana, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very honored to be moderating this session with the wonderful speakers, whom I'm sure they are going to support us in the process towards making digital inclusive in the education and in Lebanon. Always the long road starts somewhere, so hopefully it's starting today. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, so we're gonna try to use every minute of this lovely meeting. And we will be starting with Mrs. Karam from Alpha. Hopefully she can help us visit the reality and what experiences and what opportunities do we have, what is the situation like. So,
yes, hello everyone, hi. So I'm going to share a little bit my experience of not only Alpha, of what we're seeing in the country, on a nationwide. With the NGOs I'm working. I work with 8 NGOs, so I've been there for 15 years, and I'm going to little talk of what we're having and what we're suffering of. In fact, today everybody is speaking about having accessibility to technology. Definitely we need to, okay. So, it's all about technology. So, definitely we need to have accessibility to technology. This is very important. But what I need to say and we need to work on is different, is a little bit different. We have to go into the stage 0 before going to stage 1. So I think that our country still is not yet well ready, okay, to talk about digital accessibility. Okay, let's face it and let's see the truth. We have, first, we have the financial issue that we have in our country, the economical and financial matter. This economical and financial matter, we are in the pyramid of Maslow, we are at the first level. So what we are seeking for is food and shelter. We're not going into several levels where there is esteem, and then when there is esteem, we can talk about inclusiveness and we can talk about digital. Sorry? Yeah. So we have this matter that is very important. We really need to go in the pyramid of Maslow, go a little bit higher than going into the daily, food and shelter thing, in order to be able to work on the technology accessibility. This is one thing. The second thing that we have also is that our mentality, our cultural, the culture in our country is not yet ready. Okay, they speak about digitalization and accessibility, but in fact we are still very far from this. Our mentality, our cultural, we have cultural barriers that are here, and this is not helping us to move forward. There is also the laws in the country. We don't have any law in the country that protects or asks us to go into the technology, digitalization, the accessibility. So when there is no law, then people are not obliged to do it. Okay, it's just à la tête du client. Okay, so this also doesn't help. Having these three factors, then we at Alpha and myself, we realized that what is very important to be done is to be able to create a program that is our sustainability program. And in order to make things happen, even on a very, very small scale, but we need to do something and we need to go forward. This is why in 2006 we started this program. It's a program for people with iron will. We don't call people with special needs. We consider they have an iron will to live and to be able to overpass all the matters that we have, not that they have only, but that we have also in our country. There's nothing that is done properly in order to help them to have a better living. Okay, so we have a program that is our sustainability program, and we work on several levels to change the laws and to be implementing, decent and accessible, not only laws but also implementation in the country, in order to be able to have, a decent life, all of us. It's not just the people with iron will, all of us, because I consider myself and all of us, we are all one community. So they are not a community and we are another one. At the end of the day, we are all one community, and we need to evolve in this, as one. That's it. I will not take longer. Sylvain.
Thank you. Thank you. So I will... I will give the floor to Shadi because he informed me that he has to leave in 5 minutes. So sorry, we'll go back to discuss what you have said.
I'm sorry. I have to leave at 5 minutes before 2. So I just have a few minutes. So do you want me to go on any particular topic or maybe respond to the previous topic?
Shadi, if we were to benefit from the gathering, what are the 1, 2, 3 things you would recommend to suggest to us as guidelines for a start?
Great, thank you. First, I'm really delighted to be here, and I'm really delighted to see this discussion. And I know it's only a discussion, and that real accessibility, happens on the ground, not in discussion. It needs to be implemented. And I do hear, the frustrations of some of the speakers that have expressed over the past 2 days. But my real recommendation is, let's start. We can start. And, I don't think we can wait. I don't think it's about, getting shelter first and food and then, worrying about other things. I think we need everything, and we need it now. And I don't think people with disabilities can wait. And I think some of the things are also not that expensive and not that difficult. Some things can be done right now. So for example, just to give you an anecdote, I was in Uganda some years ago, and we were talking about digital accessibility. And one of the reporters got really, really angry at me. He was really angry. He's saying, you know, we have people who don't have food on the table. What are you talking to me about digital accessibility? This is not the right time, you know. And just 2 months later, the Ministry of Telecommunications there introduced an electronic identity card for all citizens. Everybody needed to have an electronic identity card to be able to get any citizen benefits, to be able to, you know, register themselves. And people with disabilities were locked out. They hadn't considered accessibility so the IT is here. It is being implemented. It is, you know, permeating all parts of our lives. And very often with relative simple changes. It's a matter of, you know, putting a ramp in front of the door. It's a matter of making sure that the door opens in the right direction. There are sometimes really, really small changes that can be done. It doesn't have to be the extra expensive elevator that, you know, does such and such, but there could be reorganizational stuff, you know, that can go a lot of long ways. So I know, I come from Egypt. I totally understand that it's there are economical issues, there are economical aspects that need to be balanced out, and that we need to be pragmatic and prioritize, and we can't have everything. But we need to start in all the areas, in everything, and we need to start now, would be my point.
Thank you, Shadi. I think it is very encouraging to know that in a country like Uganda, situation should be even harder than here and already started. So it gives us hope for this. We will move to Remy, and maybe I would ask you the same question about if we were to benefit from this gathering, what are the things that you would recommend as guidelines to start with? Knowing your relation with the students and being close to them, maybe you can reflect more the ground.
Hi, I'm just going to start by introducing myself. My name is Remy Lies. I work at AUB Student Affairs Office. I am in charge of the Student Wellness Outreach Office, and I work very closely to other support services we provide to students, such as the Accessible Education Office and the Counseling Center. So basically, over the last 2 years, we've been really directed our attention towards supporting students with any way we can do that. So basically, we've been providing students with psychosocial outreach, education, awareness campaigns in order to increase their knowledge about different situations or different difficulties that people might face. Rather having it being physical, psychological, mental, developmental, anything. So we've tried to target raising their awareness and acceptance and providing students with a more of a positive attitude towards such difficulties. So I'm just going to reflect on my experience as both being part of the Student Affairs Office and being a part-timer as an ABA therapist working with children with autism. So basically, I do think that as a culture, we are far behind when it comes to accessibility and acceptance and awareness. But I do think, like my colleague mentioned, that we can start. It was hard, it was difficult, and we do face difficulties, and people are not as accepting, but we have to move forward. So the first step, I think, is raising awareness and having people with difficulties and people without accept. So I think that the first step is to raise awareness on these topics and help people understand what situation they might face on a daily basis, and start with as simple as the terminology. So I guess you mentioned that in regards to referring them to like children or individuals with special need, referring to them as people with iron will, which I do agree. It takes a lot of resilience on both the part of the individual who faces special needs and their parents in order for them to be included in our daily life. And I would think that having given them accessibility, it's nice to refer to it as working hard to do that, but we have to understand that this is their human right. So involving them, giving them accessibility is not a favor we're doing. We have to know that it is their right as humans in our society to be included. And I think including individuals with such high resilience is very important, and we can really learn from individuals like them and from their experience. And the third guideline that I think that we have to start with is having institutions adapt. So when we first introduced the Accessible Education Office and the Student Wellness Outreach, there were a lot of sensitive topics that needed the faculty, the staff, the institution as a whole to adapt to. So it is difficult and it needs perseverance, and there's going to be a lot of acceptance and a lot of rejection, a lot of doubt, but we have to push forward. So starting from an institution as a start, and then moving forward to the country as a whole. So, and I do think that accessibility and inclusion as a whole positively affects the culture in many ways. So I see, for example, the schools that include people with special needs, the quality of students that interact with students that have any kind of disorder or disability, they truly have magnificent qualities that I think will help them grow as individuals in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Now we move to Mr. Jennison Assumption. Am I pronouncing right? Co-founder of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, engineering manager, accessibility LinkedIn International Standards for Digital Accessibility. Mr. Jennison, if you can tell us what incentives can be provided to encourage institutions for adopting accessibility compliance, in your experience?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. In terms of incentives for a school, first of all, there's recognition that comes out of doing the work. Being whether it's this university or any other university that's represented here, as you start down the journey of making your campus digitally accessible and inclusive, you almost immediately become known, or you can become known as a leader in the field when it comes to accessibility and inclusion. And I think that in itself is a lot. It's motivational. It gives people, when you have those very difficult conversations that are going to happen, the sensitive conversations, it makes all of that stuff worth it once you reap the benefits. And students, the incentives are students will want to come to your school. Students with disabilities and impairments will want to come there because they know you're welcoming, digitally welcoming, but also in the civil society and amongst other colleges and universities, you become, that becomes an incentive, I would believe. Another incentive is as you go through your journey of becoming more digitally accessible and inclusive, you can become attractive and or eligible to receive funding. Perhaps you could get grants from large organizations that do provide grants and from large technology firms out there who might be looking to make investments in your school. So again, that would be, to me, that would be an incentive to wanting to make your school more digitally accessible and inclusive. The fact that there might be an actual financial reward for that, and maybe you could get partnerships that companies would be willing to come in to help bring in accessible technology. So it wouldn't be something that you would have to work on yourselves. If I could, really quickly, because I know we're short of time, I did want to say a couple of quick things around the importance of the leadership at the top of any college or university needs to be the ones who need to set the tone around accessibility. You know, it's one thing to appoint someone to be the point person to actually get the day-to-day work done to make your campus digitally accessible and inclusive. But if leaders at the top of the house within the colleges and universities are not communicating early and often the strong support there is, nothing else will happen, trust me. It is a lot easier when that tone is set from the top, when there are those difficult conversations that have to happen, and they will happen, that you can have a reference point on that to be able to say, hey, this isn't something I'm asking you to do, this is coming from the top. Your goal should also always be to not only have a single point person to be the accessibility, of course you need that, but your real goal should be that, and some other people have mentioned this, accessibility should be the domain of many. Everyone has a role to play. Student Affairs Office, the different faculties, the IT infrastructure organization, facilities, all of those other areas. It should not be left to one small group to say, okay, you're all going to be responsible. Everyone has a role to play in that. And finally, I did want to mention, as you build policies out, your policy is only going to be effective if you make it such that if people don't comply with the policy, there's a price. There's a price to pay for that. It can't just be having a policy written on paper, and if people decide they're not going to follow it, there's not going to be any consequence. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so if we are to summarize so far, what are we moving around? We have cultural barriers. That is one of the main barriers. And we have the lack of laws and how to make the shift from charity into rights-based approach. We've also tackled the challenges regarding accepting to start the change or no. Now we will go to our dear Joe to try to tell us what are our opportunities, what real steps can we start to start the 1,000-mile journey in making digital inclusive in Lebanon. What do you think, Joe?
Dear panelists, dear audience, it's a great honor for me to be here today. First of all, let us start by the whole story. The whole story it's not about only accessibility. It's about the awareness, the raising of awareness of the whole society. When we raise the awareness of the whole society, we can talk easily about accessibility and about right-based model, so we can start to feel that our society is human and not materialistic. You'll ask me about the steps. I'll answer the steps by mentioning them so that it can be clear to every one of us. The first step we should take is the raising of awareness. The second step we should take on a Lebanese level is ratifying the CRPD. And while ratifying the CRPD, we won't talk anymore about disability. We will talk about specific needs and people with iron will. When we talk about people with iron will, we have here on our panel a great example of people with iron will and support, which is by Alpha and AUB. And we continue by supporting this issue, by evolving the law and modifying the Lebanese law, the 220/2000, so that our society will be easily living. Thank you.
Any questions from our panelists that would you like to ask one another? Discuss the points. Okay, I really think it's a great step to be taken by the university to open this topic. And right now, I think it's a very right moment. It's on time. We have a government starting now. They are talking about big projects to be implemented. I think it is very wise if we can all together try to include at least few of the steps that you would suggest to start for the short term to look for the long term then. Because we're talking about 15% of the population who need access to information and to education and to the market. The market will benefit when we have digital inclusive. Maybe we can open the floor for the audience for few questions. How much time do we still have?
Maybe 5-10 minutes.
Okay. Any questions? Any short? Yes, please. Yes.
I know we've been focusing on the learners, the students with disabilities and impairments, and the benefits they will derive from making the university digitally inclusive. But I think there's also another way to look at this too, is from the employment perspective. As AUB and other schools, if you decide to take the journey to making your campuses digitally inclusive, you also could become employers of choice of people with disabilities to come, because there's all kinds of jobs. It's not only faculty jobs, of course, at a university. There's all manner of other types of jobs. So think of it from both perspectives of, obviously your primary should be the learners, but also think of it as over time, as you move to becoming more digitally inclusive, consider your employees and diversifying your actual employee base to include people, staff with disabilities at your campus. And I think that will also help just in general around employment opportunities.
Thank you. It's a very good point. So yes, I think if we want to look at the benefits, we can have an endless list of and it stays open. Some people do say that because Lebanon has no infrastructure, solid infrastructure for going to do inclusive digital, and it costs too much because they don't realize the benefit of this. What would we answer to such points? I would like to hear this from Alpha before I go to the audience, having gone through a very important experience in challenging all type of barriers. What would you say about the cost and benefit based on your experience?
Cost and benefit of what?
Of going inclusive.
Yes, definitely. For us, we don't, inclusive, we talk about inclusive now, we're talking about conferences and inclusive. For us, this is part of our DNA. So for us, there is no difference. We really don't see any difference in, with children, with people with iron will, and people that are called normal people. We really think that we are all on the same level. Joe, we work together. We are in the same department. We work together, and I've never felt at any moment that there is difference between both of us or with other colleagues or with whomever we work. So, and I'm in the executive committee of the company. So this is our DNA, this is the way we see it. Definitely for us, they are treated, Iron Will are treated like all other employees. We just need to give them the means in order to be able to have accessibility, technology accessibility. I'm not talking about the case of Joe, but we have also hearing impaired people or people who cannot, visually impaired people. So we have special computers and special stuff in order for them to do the work. This is the only difference that we have in the company. But, and that's it. We have all the rules of the company are respected by everyone. We don't see a difference. We don't see a difference in order to do something that is really different. We just give the means and the tools when they are needed, depending on the case, okay? And work is done also depending on the case, but normally we really don't go into the details of the case of the person. When there is a position, they apply. And then when they can take the position, they take it. So this is for us crystal clear. This is why we don't see that there is any loss of benefits of love. We don't see it.
Even with the adjustment that you have to do.
Even with the adjustments, what are the adjustments that we are doing? The least that we're doing is to have accessibility in our floors. What does it cost? Sorry, what does it cost to have toilets bigger toilets and accessibility toilets? It doesn't cost anything. Everyone thinks that it will cost, and in fact, at the end of the day, it doesn't cost much. It costs nothing. Now, for the tools, if you buy a normal computer or a computer with braille, okay, what does it cost? So for us, we really we don't want to talk about the cost. We want to talk about this iron will that is for us a lesson of life, and they are giving us. We are the ones who are benefiting from them, from their work and from the life they're doing and the way they are living it. And we really feel every day that everyone is blessed to be the way we are, you know? And this is very important for us.
Thank you. Now I go to the floor. Please go ahead.
Yes.
We'll take one last question.
Yeah, first let me thank the panelists. Thank you, Silvana, for moderating this very interesting discussion. Before this panel as well, we had 2 other panels, and we had members from the parliament and ministers as well, and talking about what can the government do. And to be very frank, everybody know that everybody is here to learn. We're here as well to learn. We're trying to educate ourselves about the opportunities to make learning and other things accessible. But if I go back to the topic of the panel today, which is institutions. So the government needs to do a lot of stuff, we know that. But I think institutions as well can start and maybe help the government understand what are the things that is required. So from an institutional point of view, if I want to ask, what are the things you would recommend institutions start doing? The 1, 2, 3s that you asked at the beginning. And let's start baby steps, things like, what are those things that are not very expensive, things that can make a big impact, and it will really put us on the right track to move forward towards digital accessibility. So anyone from the panel would like to answer that?
Hello. The first steps we should take, I mentioned already, the CRPD. When we ratify the CRPD, we will have the possibility to talk about assistive devices that would make life easier for people with specific needs or iron will. because in the Lebanese law, there is nothing mentioned about assistive devices for people with specific needs or iron will. That's why we are willing to push forward through ratifying the CRPD and modifying the Lebanese law in order to talk about these baby steps and take them forward more and more.
If I may add one point. Okay, I'll delay it. Okay, go ahead, Amer. Go ahead.
شكرا سيلفانا. عامر مكارم جمعية الشبيبة للمكفوفين. أنا رح جاوب كمان مباشرة على السؤال الأساسي الطارحينه، بس حابب هيك ألفت الانتباه. مثل شركة ألفا في أمثال بلبنان ومنعرفهم، وسيلفانا شاغلة مع كتير من الشركات بس خليني أخذ مثل ال AUB. ال AUB اليوم فيها عدد لا بأس به من الأشخاص اللي عندهم disability ومختلف أنواع الديسابيليتي، كانوا أساتذة موظفين بالميديكال سنتر. كمان أنا بعرف من المكفوفين اللي توظفوا بال AUB حتى تأمن لهم البريل ديفايسز اللي حقها $5,000. فلبنان غني بالتجارب، بالخبرات وبالأمثال الرائدة. فما نضل معتبرين إنه من وين بدها تبلش المؤسسة. في كتير أمثال موجودة بالواقع. رقم 2، نحن كجمعية عاملين جايد بوك بيقول أي منظمة to become inclusive عاملين لها جايد بوك. لهيك كمان أي مؤسسة حابة تصير inclusive فينا نتعاون معها على أي مستوى اللي بدها إياه. فلهيك ما نجرب نفكر إنه بدنا نخترع البارود. الأشياء فيها تكون كتير منهجية وفيها تكون بسيطة، وفيها أي مؤسسة تقول أنا هاي السنة بدي بلش بخطوة وحدة. فيها تقول أنا فيي أعمل كذا شغلة وفيي أتكلف هالقد حط بادجت لهاي السنة لتصير مؤسستي انكلوسيف. فلهيك برجع بأكد لبنان غني بالتجارب الفردية. المشكلة الكبيرة هي كيف تعميمها، وين دور الدولة، وين دور وزارات مثل وزارة الشؤون، وزارة التربية، العمل، العدل، وزارة الداخلية. هول اللي غايبين. الغائب الأكبر هو الحكومة. شكرا.
بما أنه صديقنا حط ترجمة، أداة ترجمة، اسمحوا لي أقول النقطة بالعربي بعبر فيها أكتر. بدي أقول إنه يعني بناء على اللي عم بيقوله الصديق عامر، نحن بنحتاج يعني نفكر بخطوة لمنهجة هيدا المسار. والعائق الأساسي لما بدنا نحكي عن التجارب الغنية يلي الناس ما بتعرف فيها، يمكن لازم ندفش باتجاه mapping هيدي الجود براكتسز وبروموتينج فور ات. والمشكلة لما بدنا نيجي نحكي على التلفزيون انه او غيره عن الجود براكتسز، بيقولوا لنا هيدي عم تعملوا دعاية لكومبانيز ما فينا نحكي عنها. فهي مشكلة، لأنه good practices لازم تطلع على الضوء. في عنا بعد، معلش اسمحوا لي أخذ سؤال من صديقنا قاعد فوق، ما بعرف شو اسمه. تفضل
غسان، يلا وصل لك الميكروفون.
تفضل غسان.
بس هي
شو بدك تقلنا؟
أنا الواحد سافر.
شو بدك تقلنا؟
علي يلا شو بدك تقول؟
أنا الواحد سافر بابا نومو.
بدك تسافر؟
بدك تسافر لوين؟
بابا نومو.
عند بابا؟
عند بابا
أوكي.
روما حابب تسافر عند بابا روما؟
نعم.
اوكي شو اسمه بابا روما؟
بدي مات. طب روح.
بدك تروح؟
روح.
اوكي قولوا لي.
شكرا للجميع. Thank you everyone. I think we have many important recommendations that came out from this session from the dear panelists, and we should build on these recommendations and hopefully draw our map to continue moving from micro to macro as we would like to see the sustainability of inclusion. And I want to thank you before organizing this very important step. And I want to thank all the panelists and especially Joe, who's going to be...
It's an example that we follow.
Yes, sure. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.